Today we're going to talk about our line design value collage project in Art 1. Lines and shapes. A line is an element of art defined by a point moving in space. Lines have different weights, thick or thin. A shape is a two-dimensional area or plane that is closed. A shape is created when lines connect. A pattern is repeated lines or shapes. In each shape you create on your paper, you will fill with patterns. Each shape must be filled with a different pattern, and there cannot be any white space larger than a lima bean. Rhythm and variety. Rhythm is repetitive visual elements that achieve a specific effect, and variety is a principle of art concerned with the combining of one or more elements of art in a different way to create interest. In this project, you are combining lines, shapes, and values in order to create rhythm and variety. Value is the lightness or darkness of a hue or neutral color. So during this project, try to create a variety of different values throughout the paper, so when you step back and look at it, you can see darker and lighter areas giving you visual interest. You definitely don't want your entire piece of paper to be really dark or really light. You want to make sure to have some contrast. So here you're going to see how your eye moves around the page because there are different variations of value giving the interest to the piece of work. So in this area down the left corner, you're going to see how there's darker areas, thicker weight of lines, which kind of draws your eye to it. And then this type of radial effect kind of comes up and you see different kind of loops as you go around. And it's really important to make sure that you have different thicknesses of line weight and contrast to create that visual interest. So creating a Zentangle or pattern. When creating your patterns, don't be afraid to add value to them. Instead of just leaving spaces white or coloring them fully black, try to see how you can create texture and various values. Here's a few examples of how you can do so. Using a Sharpie pen, so you can do hatching and cross-hatching examples like the ones on the left. And then the ones on the right are showing different types of Zentangle patterns. You guys can definitely use your Chromebooks to look up different Zentangle patterns if you're having a hard time coming up with something. Basically, what we're asking for is just repeated lines, shapes. So if you want to do repeated ice cream cones in one of your shapes, that's totally fine. Ice cream cone is a shape, it's repeated, it becomes a pattern. I wanted to give you guys, I don't know if you've heard of C.J. Hendry before. She's an epic artist, current in the art world. Just kind of take a look. So she created this drawing with just pens. She's a hyper-realistic artist. So let's take a look. I love how she does time lapses of her work. Cool, right? So obviously I'm not expecting this type of hyper-realism from you guys, but I wanted to give you an idea as to what artists are doing just with a pen to create that type of texture as well as variation of value. So kind of think about that while you start to create your own patterns in your line design. All right, the other part of this project is the value collage. So a value scale is 0 to 10, 0 being black and 10 being white, and then there's shades in between. When we gradually create value, we don't want to actually see the lines that kind of define the different types of values that are within the scale. You almost want it to be just like a gradual effect. So what's really important is I'm asking you all to practice not creating outlines or not seeing any lines at all. All we want to see is value. When creating value, squint at your drawing, and if you see blended value, then you're doing a great job. If you see a few lines or one area kind of sticking out, then try blending it some more. So check out this drawing using either graphite or ebony pencil, but notice how there's no actual lines. Like the artist did not draw an actual line all the way around. These planes of values are being created by value instead of the shape being defined by a line. So the artist was able to create this value, which created this shape, and then it gives the illusion that it's an edge of a cube. That's kind of what we're looking for. So we don't want to see any type of outlines. I'll give you an example. CJ also works in colored pencil. This is part of the jacket that's on the slideshow. So much blending happens. All right, so she's starting off really light and then really building values over and over and over again. And that's how she's creating this blended effect. There's no using blending tools or anything like that. It's just colored pencil and it's a bunch of layers. And that's what I'll be asking from you guys when it comes to your ebony pencil. And there's the jacket right there that she's working on. Let's check this one out too. It gives you a color effect. See how she's going in between those colors to create the gradation? That's kind of the idea. You guys are encouraged to just use ebony pencil, but if you wanted to do one color to do a gradual gradation in one of your shapes, that's fine too. All right. So you're going to be combining both of the skills of drawing lines and then also doing values. So you'll create a composition consisting of line design and value collage. Draw lines through your paper to create 6 to 10 shapes. The lines can be straight or curved. They can be abstract or they can create recognizable shapes. So what I mean by this is you could literally take your piece of paper, draw some lines from edge of the paper to the other edge to create your 6 to 10 shapes. You'd be good to go. Or if you enjoy doing something like bubble letters or just like more like bubble images, that's fine too, as long as you're creating the 6 to 10 shapes. Keep in mind that if you are doing something more realistic, shapes include the negative space that you're creating. So 6 to 10 total shapes. Choose which shapes will be patterns in the line design and which shapes you'll do the value collage. So you want to evenly distribute this as well. So you'll have 5 shapes that have patterns in them, and then 5 shapes where you do your value collage. Line designs are created with the Sharpie pens, and the value collage is created with ebony and colored pencils. If you choose, I didn't want to have you guys just do a totally black and white piece of work if that's not your style, so I am giving you guys the option to do a colored pencil. However, I want you to evenly distribute the usage of the colored pencils and ebony. So if you're doing 5 shapes of the value collage, then maybe 3 shapes colored pencils, 2 shapes ebony pencil would be an option. Be creative, be experimental, and definitely have fun. So I want you guys to really, there's no wrong way of doing this. As long as you're putting in effort and you're kind of trying to be creative, that's all I'm asking for. So here is the creating value with ebony. It's a tutorial I kind of gave you guys that we'll watch. For today's demonstration, I'm using a Sanford ebony pencil. Today I will show you how to create a gradation of value without using your finger or any other blending materials. Ebony pencil is really soft, so it's really great to use when you're trying to create a very large range of values. In the top circle, I'm showing you what normally students do when they first get the ebony pencil in order to create value. You're going to see that my hand is moving very quickly across the page, and there's a lot of white spaces in between all the pencil lines. Now in this circle, I want you to see how I'm using a different technique in order to create value. This technique is what I want you to practice. I apply a light value with small circles, which means that my hand is going slower and adding little circles as I move around inside the circle. Notice that I'm barely holding the pencil. I'm allowing the ebony pencil to rest in my fingertips while I move my wrist back and forth. By having a loose grip, it allows me to have little pressure on the ebony pencil, which creates the lightest value. Your hand should not hurt from gripping the pencil, so if it does feel sore, loosen up. Notice how far back I'm holding the pencil so that the end of the pencil is in the palm of my hand. That allows me to give a really light value without putting too much pressure on the pencil. When using ebony pencil, you want to start by adding a light value over the entire shape, and then from there you build your value. You'll see that by taking your time and making sure that you add a light value with little circles in different directions, you'll have a nice smooth value. In the bottom box, you're seeing that I'm holding the pencil really tight and close to the end of the pencil where the lead comes out of, and I can't really create a nice smooth transition from dark to light because of how I'm holding the pencil and also how I'm applying it with big streaks. The most important thing is to slow down and take your time. In the other box, I'm showing you how to use the circle technique in order to create a smooth transition. Notice how far back I'm holding my pencil in order to make sure I don't put a lot of pressure on it. My goal is to create the lightest value possible using this ebony pencil. Notice that it's easier to make a smooth transition from dark to light when I add a light layer over the entire thing and then I build that value. As I add darker values, you'll notice that my hand gets closer to the tip of the pencil, which allows me to put more pressure on the pencil. Ebony pencil smudges easy, so be careful not to smudge the work that you've already created. In order to get rid of steps in between values, what I like to do is very lightly kind of brush my ebony pencil over where I see those lines in order to kind of fade those lines. This technique of blending values without smudging does take some practice. And then here is a video of how you can blend colored pencil to create something that's a little bit more realistic. For the value collage, if you wanted to use more than one color to do this more blending effect, then you're more than welcome to do so. Otherwise, if you're wanting to do one color of colored pencil, you're going to be using the same type of technique that was just shown in the last video. The object I used for this demonstration is a fake apple, and as you can see, it does have fake bruises, highlights, and other gradations throughout. Based on the variations of this apple, I've chosen 5 colored pencils: yellow, orange, red, dark red, and brown. I'm going to first start with the middle tone, which is the pure red. I'm using the same techniques you were taught when using ebony pencil, which is starting with a very light value with little tiny circles in different directions so it's a smooth transition. I want to make sure that you can't see any lines of the pencil. Building with colored pencil does take a very long time, so it's not expected to finish this type of project within 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to take hours and days to finish. I start by laying down a base tone, so the lightest red that I can get throughout the entire apple before I go ahead and add different values. I am adding color to a rounded object, so it is important to keep in mind that your pencil strokes should be a little bit more curved than they are flat. I continue adding the red light value throughout the entire apple, and I also make sure that I move my paper around so that the strokes of my pencil are in different directions. Once I get done with the base coat, I now go ahead and start figuring out where my values are going to be, still using the red colored pencil. From there, I continue to build layers of red to give more value and more dimension. Now it's time for me to start using the dark red pencil to bring even more depth. I'm going to be using this pencil to give more shadows to the apple so it shows that it's a rounded form. Throughout the drawing, I bounce back and forth between all the colors to give more dimension, and I truly am layering the colors within each other. The brown colored pencil is one of the last values I use because it is the darkest. I also want to make sure that I add a cast shadow to show that the apple is sitting on a surface. So timeline. Today is day 1. It was the intro and demonstration. I'm going to distribute supplies, and then you guys can begin practicing on the practice sheet that I have that I've already put in your bags. On day 2, you're going to finish your practice sheet, submit it to Google Classroom by taking a picture, and then begin your final project. Days 3 through 6, you're going to work on the project, and by the end of day 6, your project should be finished, and you should be submitting it to Google Classroom. On day 6, you'll also probably find some type of Google form or assessment to kind of grade yourself and reflect on how the project went, and then that way I'll go through that before grading you as well. If you guys have any questions at any time, please don't be afraid to ask. I'll be socially distanced walking around to give you some more feedback, and if you ever need to look at these videos again, they will be, this PowerPoint is going to be up on Classroom, so you guys can kind of watch a video while you're trying it yourself for your practice sheet if that's something you'd like to do. All right, you got this.